A Word to the Wiseguy is the 15th episode of the third season of Frasier. This was directed by Philip Charles MacKenzie, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode and share some thoughts about things that happen. And I really enjoyed this one. I know I say that about most Frasier episodes, but it's true. It's a really good episode. That being said, it's never going to be one of my favourites, but there are some really good moments in this. So I'll go through things chronologically and share some thoughts in that order. And it starts off establishing the main narrative pretty instantly, where Niles reveals that Maris has actually got a court summons because there are a bunch of unpaid parking tickets. And Maris actually turned to Niles for help. I don't think, in my opinion, that it's because Maris thinks of Niles as a source of help, but because she needs a way to get out of this, and Niles is going to do anything for her because he always has. Niles actually asks Martin to help because, of course, he was a cop, and I think Martin did the right thing in saying that he won't help him with this because it wouldn't be the right thing to do. So I completely side with Martin there. We then cut to KACL, and just after Frasier is finished on a call, Niles comes in. I always like it when Niles is down at KACL. It does make me wish that we actually got to see Frasier in Niles' place of work a little more frequently, but that's just more of something I would like rather than a criticism. And Niles says, and I quote, "They're prosecuting my Maris." The my Maris there really stood out to me. I think it's clear to say that Niles really is struggling to move on with this separation. I think, as we see with this episode, he's holding on to a lot of hope. And in fact, Roz gives Niles the number of a guy who can help, and he says, and I quote again, "I just know this man is the answer to my problems." And it seems like Niles thinks that if he gets Maris back, if he can restore his marriage, then everything will be fine again. Obviously, he's not able to see the fact that nothing has changed with Maris, and even if she did, say, move back into the house, nothing would have actually changed. And it's kind of upsetting to see that Niles is clinging onto this so much. He then contacts this guy, and he waits outside with Frasier to meet him in the middle of the night. And Jerome arrives. He's played by Yulin, and Niles explains to Jerome, initially in a very kind of roundabout way, in a way that Niles doesn't usually speak, but he explains the situation to Jerome, and Jerome goes inside. He makes a phone call. We don't really know what he's doing, and he comes back and just says, "I've sorted it." And there's this incredible suspense as we kind of wait for what we think might happen next, or some kind of shocking reveal. And the direction it takes, I think, is definitely not the direction I would have predicted. But Jerome does say to Niles, "Maybe one day you'll be able to do a favour for me." And there is that kind of, as Niles felt, an almost threat there. "I did this for you, so one day you're going to have to repay it." And it's got great suspense, really great suspense to it. And then, cut to the next scene, Niles and Frasier enter Frasier's apartment after playing tennis, and Jerome is in the apartment. And Frasier is clearly panicking about this, but Martin and Daphne are having a nice time talking with him. They don't really understand what's gone on, of course, but then again, we the viewer don't really know what's happened. But Jerome has came to collect the favour. And again, we have a bit of suspense as we wait for him to reveal what this is, but it actually turns out that his lady friend, as he calls her, Brandy, wants therapy before she'll agree to marry him, and Jerome wants that therapy to be from Frasier. Brandy is a fan of the show, so it's actually Frasier who's having to do the favour for Niles, which I thought was an interesting take and not what I'd expected. We then do have the phone call down at KACL where Brandy actually phones into the show, and Frasier ends up giving her, I don't want to say bad advice, it doesn't seem like bad advice, but he does tell her to run and to not marry him, to not marry Jerome. And of course Frasier has just on air told Jerome's lady friend to not marry him. Is Jerome going to get his own back? Well, things do get quite interesting, and Niles and Frasier again meet Jerome at Cafe Nervosa, and Jerome reveals that despite Brandy's concerns, he has never cheated. He has done everything for her. He called in favours to get her 14 jobs, and she lost all of them. And he calls her a dodo, which I think is a little bit harsh, but it's very well written. And he goes off on how about you can love a dodo, you can marry a dodo, but you shouldn't encourage a dodo when they're just going to fail at everything, which, again, a little bit harsh. But he also acknowledges that what Frasier said was not in his favour. And something has to happen to rectify the situation. And now it's time for Niles to do his fair share. And Brandy ends up working for Niles. And we have some delightful comedy at the end where Frasier phones up Niles' office and a woman answers and we can assume it's Brandy. She then does confirm it's Brandy and she refers to Dr. Niles Crane as a psychiatrist, which was just tremendous fun. So a nice light-hearted way to end things. It's a really good episode. I think Jerome is a really fascinating character. I really liked what he brought to this. I think there was definitely a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability with this. It's a very well-written episode with some really great performances. While it would never be an all-time favourite, there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. I rather enjoyed it. A Word to the Wise Guy is absolutely a decent episode of Frasier.